Hello, thank you for tuning in to Model Building and Retirement. This is Ken. In today's episode, it's part one of a two-parter on the build out of the 1971 Revell Mach 1 kit. In part one here, we're going to do the complete preparation of the body all the way through clear coat. Right after the intro, we'll get started. So for our next build, it's the 1971 Mustang Mach 1 from Revell, and this is the Diamonds Are Forever 007 Mach 1 kit. I've already built this once, and I'll have a picture above. That was done with Mach 1 side stripes, because this kit does not come with the side stripes, because it's representing the one that was in the movie, which was Striped Elite. But I did the green one in honor of my brother's car that he had in high school, which did have the stripes, and that was Grabber Green Metallic. It was a beautiful color. And then I owned a 72 in the early 80s that was in metallic blue with silver argent, and I have a picture above there, but that is the car that I had. It's very faded. That was out in Arizona, but the picture is very faded, so the color doesn't show up. But the Acapulco blue or metallic blue, here's the color. It's going to be very beautiful. Going to have a little thing up here too. Look at the top of the screen there. That is when I had it listed in Auto Trader. I had bought it for $2,700 and listed it in late 1984 for $3,600 and took a lowball offer of $3,500. So I still made a profit. But boy, talk about one of the life's worst decisions, because this car's, the condition that car was in, if I maintained that condition and still had it all these years, the car would be worth $50,000, $60,000 at least. Anyways, what do we got in the kit? Okay, so we have a fastback body. And I built this kit, so I already know that I'm going to enjoy the build because it's a very nice quality build. It's going to come with white wall tires, because that's what the movie car had, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do some Iceman Collection Firestone radials with Krager SS wheels, 15-inch, wide in the back and narrow in the front, staggered, because that's what I had. At least on the back I had them. I didn't upgrade the front wheels as of yet when I sold the car. All right, then you got some chrome, which includes the back bumper and a chrome front bumper, but we won't be using that. There's a body colored bumper in the kit. Got your lower valance. Your glass kit, which comes not only with your windshield and your quarter windows, but it comes with your headlights and marker lights and tail lights all in there. Real nice plastic grille. Now, it don't look like much now, but boy, that details out beautiful. All right, we got our wheel backs. We got our cross members for our engine compartment, our console, rear differential, front sway bar, just miscellaneous parts here. And then we got our dashboard, firewall, and some chassis parts here, radiator. These are for the Diamonds Are Forever kit, these are the dog dish hubcaps with beauty ring. It actually comes in just white. It's not on the chrome tree. But I'll tell you what, these will look really nice if you spray them with Revell chrome spray or even that new Fusion Firm stuff. These wheels will look really nice. The ones on my brother's green car, I did with the Revell spray, and they detailed real nice. All right, then we got our underbody of the car, some more suspension parts. All right, engine parts, 351. No, this is the 429 V8. Mine had the 351 in it, but I'm going to build it with the 429. Taillight panel, some miscellaneous parts, hood, interior, nicely detailed interior. I remember building this, so I always like when they have the separate sides of the interior, because it just allows you to get in there and do a lot of nice detail work. And then we got the nice color instructions. I think that comes from the Germany kits. And decals. This is what you get with the kit. and they only come in black, lower stripes, and a trunk deck stripe, and lots of cool little detailed decals for the rest of the car, including a VIN number for the dash. I'd never seen that before, and you got to get a magnifying glass out, but it actually has a VIN number. It's pretty cool. I don't know who's going to really see that, but I guess if you're being judged somewhere. Then I have an aftermarket set of AMT Mach 1 decals, and then this is stolen from my Boss kit, my Boss 351 kit, which I haven't built yet. And I'm going to use the silver hockey stick stripes on there, and the trunk lid stripe. And as far as the bottom, I'm going to just paint mine two-tone with argent. Then you get real nice colored instructions. Very good kit. All right, so I'm going to get everything separated for body paint first, and I'll be right back. All right, so I got all the parts pulled for the body color. So you got your hood here. Inside's going to be black. Outside is going to be the blue. Mine did not have the silvered out top on it or the Mach 1 stripes or anything, so it's just going to have blue on the top there. Then we got our rear and front valance pans, and these are going to be argent silver. The bumper is going to be body color blue, so are the mirrors. Got to clean up a little flashing on the mirrors. And the taillight panel, this gets blacked out where the honeycomb is, but the rest of that gets body color, so that'll get cleaned up and painted. And I've already kind of pre-inspected the body. And remember, this is a fresh release. I think it's the first run of this body, so you know, it's one of your better kits with as far as flashing goes. A little bit though, there's a little mold separation line right at the top of the fastback, and just a little sharp on top of the rear quarters. And I'm going to just touch over those front fenders a little bit. I'm just going to hit this with some 800 and finish up with some 5000 wet sandpaper just to prep it all good for paint. So I'm going to get all that prepped. I'm also going to do rescribing on my body lines. So I'm going to do my door panel lines and my trunk lines, and around my windows and stuff where I'm going to be doing my bare metal foil. So let me get all this stuff prepped, and then we'll be back to talk about the paint. All right, so all the parts have been cleaned up, sanded, rescribed, and washed with Dawn dish soap to make sure all the dust and dirt and any mold release compounds, all that stuff been removed. And I'm going to go out the primer. A little bit different this time. My norm is usually airbrushing all the way using MCW lacquer primer, but I happen to be out of that, so I just ran down to the local hobby store and got some Mr. Surfacer 1000 in the rattle can. Be my first time using this primer, but I'm sure it's going to be fine because, you know, with primer, you can spray it first, and if necessary, you can sand it before you go to color coat. So I'm going to take this outside instead of my booth, so I have plenty of room to spray it without bumping it or anything. So meet you outside. All right, so we're going to go outside here and paint some primer. Makes better sense to be out of the wind. I didn't start out real smart, but okay, now onto the body. Just going with some really light spurts here. Just 2 coats. I definitely prefer airbrush since I've gotten so used to it. I mean, I used to enjoy rattle can, and I could still spray good with rattle can, but I prefer the airbrush. I have complete control, I feel. Okay, 1 more coat on the body. Ooh, even out here, I should have worn a respirator. Alright, so the primer is dried and cured. It looks really good. It's the first time I ever used that. Boy, that levels out really nice. No bumps, no dust. I don't even see any orange peel or anything, so that's good. It's nice to know that I got a good alternative for my primer. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to spray the silver on the bottom. Now the kit does come with silver argent decals for this bottom portion, and when I did the green Mach one, I actually used the black decals, and they actually laid on really nice, but I got the color and I got the paint. I might as well just spray it on, make it a little easier. So I'm going to mask that off. I don't have to mask, but I don't want that silver to have any effect on the blue top coat. If I went silver all over, I wouldn't be so concerned, but there's no sense wasting paint. So I'm just going to run a little bit of masking tape across that body line there. And I'm not going to worry about masking the entire car because I can lightly wet sand or whatnot. So I'm going to just hit that and the 2 valance panels. And I'm going to just be spraying this argent silver here. So let me get that masked up and we'll be back. Alright, so I got the body masked off, and like I said, you don't have to do a marvelous job of masking because I'll be just concentrating the paint down there, and any little overspray I can just lightly sand off on the top. Okay, so I'm going to get that to the booth. I got my paint all mixed up. I don't need very much. I only mixed up like 5 milliliters. Probably shouldn't use any more than that. So it's going to be just the front and back lower valances and the bottom edge of the car. Meet you at the booth. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes or so, so the paint is not cured, but it's dry. So I'm going to pull that masking off. Nice crisp line. Now when you do the blue, the kit comes with an optional decal that goes right at that transition to mimic the chrome trim that would be on the car, and it actually looked pretty good on the green car, so I'll probably do that again. And that way, if you have any mess up right there at the border of your 2 shades, that's a perfect way to camouflage it. So there you go, we got our bottom argent painted on. That was actually, you know, even then you got to mix up paint and do all that stuff, it was actually easier than doing those decals. So, all right, I'm going to let that cure up until it can be taped off in the dehydrator, maybe 24 hours. So we'll be back. All right, so the silver has been allowed to cure overnight in the dehydrator. So I've already masked off one side. I just got to finish this side here, and I'm just using my frog tape cut to about 3/4 inch width. And then just making sure I get as close as I can to the correct edge here. All right, now real important to get that edge down real nice. And trust that when we take this tape off, that we don't peel up the underlying paint. I've already sanded, cleaned, and prepped my paint. Didn't take much, just to knock off a couple dust narbs And then I always make sure that I sand around my window trim a little bit so that remains smooth after every paint process. That way when I put my bare metal foil on there, it looks much better than a bumpy texture, because all your dry spray and everything else just accumulates, and when you put your bare metal foil down there and you haven't addressed that, it's going to look all bumpy and just not look smooth like it should. It should look like stainless steel trim. All right, this is just my Tamiya anti-static brush. It, along with everything else that I use, is in my description, mainly Amazon. So you'll find it in the links there. All right, I have that, and then I have all my other parts ready. I'm gonna dust them now, and then I'm gonna hit them one more time just before I spray. And I've already mixed up my blue. So this is MCW Acapulco Blue, number 6730E, and it is mixed 1-to-1 with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. And I mixed more than I needed. I have probably 15 milliliters here. I probably won't use over 10, but I didn't want to run short and stop in the middle of my process. So, all right, next step, the booth. Okay, so I'm at the booth now, and I always start with the spray it on a spoon just to make sure everything's functioning well, and that sprayed out really well. So I start off with a very light mist coat. I'm probably only about a quarter throttle at this point, and I'm shooting a .35 millimeter needle and muzzle and about 18 to 20 psi, which is pretty much my standard settings for my base coats and clear coats. Sometimes the primer I vary a little bit, but I'm going very light mist coats just to get some color into the nooks and crannies and the hard to get areas instead of just laying that paint on there. Especially when you're dealing with metallics, it'll do what they call walking, which means that every line, whether it's a door gap, an emblem, or whatever, it kind of separates and just doesn't cover that area real well. So it's very important to get that little mist coat in. And I'm just hitting all the parts very light, and then once I get all the nooks and crannies, just get some color in there, then I'm going to go with a light tack coat on the entire pieces. And what I'm trying to do there is I'm acclimating the paint to the primer to make sure I'm not going to get any reaction. It kind of creates a little bit of a barrier, because if you soak your paint with your solvents into that primer below, especially if it's a new primer you haven't dealt with, like in this case for me, it's the first time I used that Mr. Color primer, Mr. Surfacer that is. And here you're going to notice that I'm going very light with that dust coat and aiming right at the door gaps and panel gaps and window trim areas. Once again, that metallic likes to do that walking or separation. So if you get a nice little light coat in there and push that color into those edges nice and dry, it's going to help prevent that from happening. And then as soon as I did that, as you see here, I'm just kind of going with that light tack mist coat throughout the entire body now. So once the parts have all had the complete dust coating or tack coating, I don't even wait. I just go back into the same rotation, start with the first piece again, and I lay on a nice medium coat. And finally, I will go back and do 1 to 2 wet coats, whatever's necessary. And you're going to also see that sometimes I'll cross paint like the roof and trunk and hood, the top areas, especially with metallics, that is, because you could have, when you're doing your overlaps, you might have what looks like rows of metallic buildup. So if you go both directions, you're kind of minimizing that and letting that metallic flow out evenly. You'll see as we progress here, I'm going to go to fast forward and let you enjoy a little music while we do that. And I'm just going to keep on adding my coats, but you'll notice my second or last coat I get really wet, and in fact on the final coat I even dilute my paint a little bit more with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, just to make that paint really flow. So let's watch the rest of this in fast forward. All right, so it's peel the tape time. Usually my favorite part, one of my favorite parts, as long as it goes well. Got one more piece to take off here. I do it while the paint is still tacky, because if you wait until it is done, cured, it's two things can happen. One is that it could peel off the paint. That, you know, the paint's hard, it may come up with the edge of your tape. And then the other thing is, the longer you leave that tape on what you were masking, the risk of it pulling up the tape below it is increased. All right, so that went extremely well. I like to leave certain parts on the car too, like this is to be removed, but you know, for right now it's in handy because this car is still tacky. I'm able to touch it there without damaging anything. Anyways, there you go. You got your two-tone paint, nothing peeled up, nothing leaked through. And I love when I recreate an old car of mine, because as the paint is laying on there, you're looking at it in your car, in your memory, it just comes back to you. It's like, ah, I remember my beautiful car. I remember it. Yeah, paint came out very good. I honestly haven't spotted any dust. But I cleaned my booth real good and changed my filter right before I started. But this is not the final paint anyways. What's next is decals and clear coat, and foil too. So quite a few steps to go yet before it's finished, but I think she's looking pretty good. I'm gonna let that cure up real well before I do decals, so probably another day or two, we'll be back at it. Okay, so when I do the decals, I have fresh, clean water, just room temperature. I keep a little detail paintbrush available that's gonna be dipped in water. I keep a toothpick, one with a rounded over edge and one with the sharp edge. My X-Acto knife, if I need it. A couple different types of Q-tips. My little detail scissors. And of course my trusty little tweezers. Alright, so what I'll do now is I'm getting ready to lay this strip right across between the fender to the rear quarter. So I wet the panel down a little bit. These only needed to be dipped in water for about 30 seconds and then set out, and probably within another 30 seconds they were ready. Some decals take forever, but in this case this was not bad. All right, kind of get your line of where you're gonna go. You know, reference on the Mach 1 pictures are that this goes just below this body line here. It's not imperative that you plan it perfectly in place, but it sure does help if you can. All right, so not bad for just laying it out, but it's not done yet. It needs to be positioned and filled with a little bit. First of all, I'm rolled over a little bit right at the leading edge here at the front clip here. There we go. So I'll use my little detail brush and just make sure it's wet. All right, then I'll try whatever tool is going to work best. I'm going to start with the toothpick. Just needs to come forward and down a little bit. Once again, I'm going to get it wet. Da, 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 da. Sometimes it's your finger that's needed. Okay, pretty good. Let's roll out some of that water. I hope you can see, but I have to see for sure. Okay, it looks pretty good. I just have the back quarter one to do here. I'll do that off camera. And then I'm going to let these just set up a little bit. And then I don't need much in the way of any kind of decal solvent, but I am going to use a little bit of the micro sol after I let these set up just a little bit. And I'm only going to put them like at the door gaps to allow that decal to soften a little bit and sink in on the gaps. And like here, I've got the key to the exhaust, to the trunk. So I'm going to soften that up a little bit. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, so I've got all the decals in place, including the marker light decals, which came with the kit. I also did my bare metal foil. Somebody along the way had recommended or asked why I did not bare metal foil before clear coat. And I tried it on one of the model kits, and I have to say ever since then I've been sold on the idea, mainly because when you spray the clear, it goes on a little bit thick and starts hiding details slightly. So therefore, if you put the bare metal foil on after your base coat and before you're clear, the cutting line is much more defined for your number 11 blade, and then you can clear cut over it. It's about the only advantage I really found by doing that. Okay, so everything's cleaned up. I use an anti-static brush, and I'll probably do that once again right before I get to the booth. Dust always seems to appear when it comes time to clear coat. And I've gathered all my body parts once again to marry up here, so I'm going to have my lower silver pieces as well. Alright, I am going to be using MCW's gloss clear enamel, and their special, and this is gloss clear enamel number 1017E as in Edward, and that will be combined with their clear hardener enamel, not to be confused with their regular hardening enamel for color. This is for clear, it's special for the 2K process. And this is going to be mixed 2 parts clear to 1 part Mr. Color Leveling Thinner and 1 part hardener. So it's 2 parts clear, 1 part thinner, 1 part hardener. Now usually I'll go a little bit more reduced with some thinner on my second coat if I need to let that spray on nice and wet. And I'm going to be going with my .35 needle and nozzle, 18 to 20 psi, and my plan is to get 2 nice wet coats on there. Okay, we'll meet you at the booth. Okay, so once again I'm spraying with my MCW clear enamel, and I'm using my Galari GHD 39, which is your beginning price point airbrush. .35 millimeter nozzle and needle, and about 18 psi pressure. So you can see I'm laying on a pretty much medium to a wet coat, overlapping about 50% on each pass. I start out on the very bottom edges before I start on the sides, you know, so I'll get under the rockers and under all the edges. And once again, I'm just laying it on nice medium to wet coat, overlapping each pass, and I'm really using that reflection in the lights. If you notice that, what you see is what you get pretty much. So if it looks dull and dry, that means I'm not spraying it wet enough or going too fast. And if it looks really nice and wet, that's great, but then you got to just be careful that you're not running it as well. So you got to pay close attention and really watch how that paint's laying on. That's really the trick. Usually I'll put just 2 wet coats of clear on, but sometimes I'll go into a 3rd coat if I feel it's necessary, especially to hide or bury decals. If I do go to that third kit, I'll usually add a little bit more of the Mr. Color Leveling Thinner to my mixture. Not very much, maybe like another 10-15% to dilute it down a little bit, and you'll notice that it's just going to spray very wet. Okay, so here we're going into our second coat, and I'm laying it on nice and wet. Watching that reflection and making sure I have no missed areas. Okay, so in this case, that's all I needed was the 2 coats. Alright, then we're going to let this all cure up for at least 24 hours. Alright, so it's been several hours. It's not fully cured, but dry enough to handle now. Paint came out very, very clear and shiny, and almost no dust whatsoever. I'm debating whether I'll even sand and polish, but yeah, I probably will just to bring that paint to perfectly flat. But it looks really, really good. All right, folks, well, stay tuned to part 2, the complete build, on next week's episode. We'll get this thing all built, and I'll give you a full kit review.